pleasure. Yeah.
Sir, Dr. Iqbal Akhtar, who's just talking, is, he and the team at FIU have done a remarkable job. Of course, our Samni ji and our team in India, programming team in India, very much, they know the scholars and they brought the scholars together, but the professionalism and the hard work, sort of the presentation coming is the hard work we have from our FIU partners.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tapan. Yeah, no, we really appreciate the partnership between JERF and FIU. So we're looking forward to doing many more of these things, as particularly the creation of knowledge. So hopefully we'll do a publication out of this conference as well, and then sort of develop other initiatives as well. Yeah.
Good morning, Satish. It's Chris Chappell in
Hi,
Los
good morning,
Angeles.
sir. How are you doing?
Hello, Chris. Chris, very nice to see you.
Very good to see you. I caught you a few weeks ago also, and I think it was a Tara event.
Yes.
It's
Yes,
so great
Tara.
that we can be together this way.
Yes, yes. It's a miracle of technology.
Yes, it is.
That we can connect. So
You're
are you
looking
keeping well? Are you
Yes,
keeping
very
well?
well.
You were planning to come to England. Are you still planning this year, next year?
Oh, probably next year.
Next year, yes.
Yeah, I had a very good sabbatical in India.
Yes.
I apologize to interrupting,
Yes,
but
you go.
we're starting now, if you don't mind. Thank you,
Yes.
Professor Chappell. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Thank you for coming. All right. So why don't we begin? If that's all right with you all. And we will begin with, I'll introduce Professor Bhansali, and then Professor Bhansali will take over this session. So Professor Shekhar Bhansali is going to be the chair, and he's part of the Jain Education and Research Foundation. The title of this panel is Neurological and Cognitive Theories of Consciousness. Professor Shekhar Bhansali is a member of the Board of Directors of the Jain Education and Research Foundation, JERF. He's director of the Division of Electrical Communications and Cyber Systems of the U.S. National Science Foundation. He is an Alcent Lucent Professor and Distinguished Professor at Florida International University here in Miami in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering. At FIU, he joined in 2011 and has served 9 years as department chair and 2 years as interim director of the School of Electrical, Computer, and Enterprise Engineering. So we are very honored to have Professor Bhansali here, and I will turn it over to you for this conference.
Thanks, Dr. Akhtar, and thanks again, everyone. It's been a remarkable morning so far. It's just a wonderful experience, and it continues. So I have, this session is structured with a keynote talk, 2 talks, and a panel discussion. And so depending on how we're going on time, we can have questions. Otherwise, we'll take the questions right to the end. So we'll kind of work dynamically based on how the time goes. My privilege to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Satish Kumar. He's a former monk, and he's been a long-term peace and environmental activist and ecologist. He's editor of emeritus of the Resurgence magazine, and has been its longest serving editor since 1973 till about 2016. He co-founded the Schumacher College in South Devon, where he's also a visiting fellow now. He continues to teach and run workshops on reverential ecology, holistic education, and voluntary simplicity. Dr. Kumar.
Thank you. It is a great pleasure to be part of this wonderful conference that you are organizing. And it's wonderful to see Muni Mahendra Kumar ji there. Thank you for being there. I was a fellow monk for 9 years. So I would like to pay my great tribute and honor Mahendra Kumar ji, and also Mahapragya ji, who taught us when we were young monks, and Acharya Tulsi. So I owe a great debt to all my great Jain teachers. And for 9 years, I was there as a Muni, as a monk. And so once you are a monk forever. in your heart. Even if you change your costume, and now at the time of coronavirus, we are all wearing masks. So we are becoming Jain monks as well. I'm going to read a short presentation, and then I will elaborate a little bit more. And then I would like to invite a few more questions maybe and discussion. So the Jain science is founded on the principle of anekant. In my understanding, anekant simply means that there is no one single truth. Truth is multidimensional. Anekant also means that there is no final truth that we can grasp intellectually or communicate verbally. The search for truth is a lifelong journey. Truth is a mystery to be discovered constantly. Truth is a process of discovery and not a final product. In Jainism, I believe in the truth diversity. There are many truths. As we have religious diversity, cultural diversity, linguistic diversity, racial diversity, and biodiversity, we also need to recognize the diversity and plurality of truths. Pluralism. Truths are not fixed phenomena. Truths are ever emerging human experience. The search for truth is complemented by the practice of nonviolence. Whatever truth we discover, we need to communicate it with respect to other people and their truths. In our pursuit of truth, we must avoid harming anyone, physically, emotionally, or intellectually. Reverence for all life is an integral part of the search for truths. Thus, Jains promote the search for truth without dogmatism or arrogance. In Jain science, truth and non-violence cannot be separated. For Jains, the practice of non-violence is paramount. We are required to be non-violent to ourselves, to all other people, and to nature, without condition or qualification. All diverse forms of nature, we have to be non-violent to all diverse forms of nature. Animals, forests, rivers, and oceans. They all have souls. Even soil has soul. Nature is not a machine. And earth is not a dead rock. Nature is alive. And our precious planet Earth is a living organism. Therefore, we must adhere to the ideal of reverence for all life, human life, as well as other than human life. As one of my previous speakers said, the humans are not superior to nature. We cannot load over nature. So we have to reverence for all life. The value of nature must never be measured in terms of nature's usefulness to humans. Nature is not and should never be considered merely a resource for the economy. Nature is the life itself. We should remain mindful of the fact that nature has intrinsic value. Nature is not to be measured how useful it is for humans. Nature has its own intrinsic value. Nature is sacred. Nature is good in itself, irrespective of its usefulness to humans. Jains would happily agree with the poet William Blake, who said, nature is the imagination itself. And also with Shakespeare, who celebrated tongues in trees. So trees speak to us. We have to listen to trees. They may not speak English, but they speak tree English. So tongues in trees and books in running brooks. So we have to learn to read the book of nature. A river is a book. We can study, we can observe, and we can listen. And sermons in stones. That's a wonderful line of Shakespeare. Sermons in stones. So you don't have to go to priests and monks and teachers in temples and churches and mosques and synagogues. Stones also teach us, sermons in stones. That's an amazing insight Shakespeare has. And he says, good in everything. So this is a kind of beautiful idea, which I would say Jains and Shakespeare would agree. And here Jain science and Western poetry come together. The beauty of biodiversity is in its plurality and multiplicity of life forms. From small insects to large elephants, and from honeybees to human beings are all made of the same elements: earth, air, fire, water, space, time, and consciousness. I would say these are the 7 fundamental elements: earth, air, fire, water. These are the 4 physical elements, and space, time, and consciousness are the 3 non-physical elements. And all living, all existence, all life are made of these 7 elements. But also we have chemical elements. We call them carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, nitrogen. And as all life is contains and made of all these elements, then there is no hierarchy of life. We cannot say that one species are superior to other species. So this is simply a dance of diversity. When you need to hear some philosophical or scientific point, you come to humans. But when you want to have some food, you go to the soil. When you want to have fruit, you go to an apple tree or an orange tree or mango tree. So each, or you want to milk, you go to a cow. Each part of nature provide life to each other. We all take life from each other. And therefore, no one species are superior to other species. Sometimes we come to believe that somehow human life is superior to other species. I humbly disagree with that. I would say all life has equal value. So for me, there is no hierarchy. This is simply a dance of diversity. And for me, the notion of equality of life is built on the foundation of the unity of life. We all come from the same source. Like in diversity, you can take, for example, wood. Wood is common to all the wooden things we make. So you can have a table, You can have a chair. You can have a bowl, wooden bowl, as monks will carry a begging bowl or a spoon, all wood, but they are in different shapes and forms. You cannot say that any one particular piece of wood, a table or a desk or a chair, is more important than something else. Each have their own use at any particular time. So there is no hierarchy. And I would like to hear our other Jain scholars, how they would speak about it. But in my understanding of Jain scriptures, and as I have learned from my first guru, Acharya Tulsi, that all life has equal value. Of course, nature feeds nature. Life maintains life. Living organisms sacrifice themselves to nourish and nurture each other. All living organisms reciprocate for mutual survival. Therefore, taking and giving of life as food is within the acceptable limits of violence. So we all have to survive, and therefore, even when vegetarians, we eat vegetables, vegetables have life too. Ekendriya or duendriya, triendriya, but ekendriya is as important life as any other forms of life. So, so life gives life, and therefore taking and giving of life as food, as a principle of reciprocity and a mutuality, is within the acceptable limit of violence. However, such violence must remain minimal and only for survival. This is the context in which Jains mostly consume plant-based food. Being a vegetarian or a vegan is an absolute rule. Meat eating and Jainism don't go, they are like chalk and cheese. They don't go together. They never go together. A plant-based diet helps humans to make a smaller footprint on our living planet. Jains are instructed by our sacred scriptures to practice minimalism and engage in the least interference in the workings of nature. Least interference in the workings of nature. We should leave nature alone as much as possible, as much as we can. According to my understanding of Jain philosophy, we are all interrelated. We are all interconnected and interdependent. Yet, all creatures are entitled to live their life in freedom. So there's a kind of amazing paradoxical balance that Jains and I believe, that although we are all interdependent, interconnected, and interrelated, and yet each and every life form is entitled to live in its own freedom. So freedom and relationship go totally together. We have no ownership of nature. Our responsibility is to have a respectful relationship with nature. How can we, I mean, once upon a time, humanity owned other humans, what was called slaves, slavery. Or even at one time, maybe hundreds of years ago, women were like ownership of man. But consciousness has changed and we have evolved. In the same way, maybe we will evolve in our consciousness and we will come to a realization that we don't own nature. We don't own the land or the forests or the animals. The ownership could become an outdated concept. We only have relationship and not ownership. This is why the principle of aparigraha in our Jain tradition, aparigraha is as fundamental as ahimsa and as fundamental as anekant. I always say there are 3 A's: Anekant, Ahimsa, and Aparigraha. Aparigraha for me is the most ecological and most environmental and most pertinent principle of our time. So we should try to remember and also emphasize as much as we can, because all our consumerism, materialism, production, consumption, economic growth, profit making, all that is driven by the principle of parigraha, accumulation and ownership of material possessions. So we need to move towards that. So this is why the ecologically inspired Jains are campaigning for the reduction of meat production around the world. The practice of factory farming, the keeping of the huge numbers of animals in cruel confinement contributes to the climate crisis. When you look at the American farming or European farming particularly, and unfortunately the Indian farming is going in the same direction, where thousands and thousands of cows or pigs or chickens are kept in one confined factory, and they never see the light of the day, and they are kept in that condition. And so that is causing climate change. 30% of our carbon emission comes from the farming practice. And our encroachment of more and more land, 30 to 40% of food is wasted, and more land in Brazil and in Indonesia, Malaysia, all the rainforests are being destroyed so that we can grow more soya, more grain. And grain is not necessarily to feed people, but to make profit. So I think our food production from a Jain principle has gone totally haywire, totally in the wrong direction. And therefore, if we want to address the issue of climate change and global climate catastrophe, then I think we need to, not as a kind of preaching Jainism as such, but reminding people that a plant-based diet, a vegetarian diet, is much more conducive to an ecological balance and ecological harmony and ecological integrity of our precious planet Earth. So we Jains are actively involved in the promotion of a plant-based diet for reasons of compassion and non-violence, but at the same time to address the crisis of climate change and mitigate the climate change effect. In Jain science, there is no separation between nature and humans, as I have said already, but we believe in the absolute integrity of life. The etymological meaning of the word nature simply means birth. Nature word comes from, in English, from Latin, natal. And the natal word means birth. So for example, when a woman is pregnant, she would go to a prenatal check, means pre-birth check. And then after the birth, you go for a postnatal check, means post-birth check. So natal, nature, nation is the same word, same root. So when you say, I am an American national or Indian national, meaning that I am born in America or in India, whichever country you are born in, you have that nation. Native is the same word. When you are native of a place, you are born in that place. So nature simply means birth. And therefore, all beings which are born are nature. Humans are born. So humans are nature too. So we cannot say nature out there, the forest, the mountains, the rivers, the animals, the birds are nature, and we humans are not nature. This is not correct. We are all nature. Humans are as much nature as mountains and forests and rivers and animals. Unity and diversity are two aspects of one single reality. Unity and diversity dance together, as I have said. The world is facing the climate crisis because faith has been disconnected from science. Science and technology have been used by commercial interests in pursuit of unlimited economic growth and industrial development, largely dependent on fossil fuels. So science and technology have become the servant of the economic growth. So in the long-term interest of climate stability and sustainability of the living earth, science needs to be wedded to spiritual values. If science and spirituality don't go together, then both are at a losing end. Without science, spirituality is also losing. And without spirituality, science is also losing. So we are both poorer. And therefore, science and spirituality must go together. As Albert Einstein, somebody quoted Albert Einstein as relative theory, which is very close to Jain. He also said, Albert Einstein said, science without religion is blind. And religion without science is lame. Science is active. Science can go, can move, can create technology, can change things physically. Science is about measurement. Science is about physical measurement. Spirituality is about values and ethics. And so Albert Einstein says that without science, science and religion always need to act together, because science without religion is blind and religion without science is lame. Scientists need to commit themselves to a future where their scientific research will not be used for harmful purposes. As doctors, when a student leaves the medical university, and before becoming a doctor, he takes a Hippocratic oath. Now, Hippocratic oath is first do no harm. That is the oath of non-violence. First do no harm. So scientists also need to take the same oath, Hippocratic oath, to do no harm. At the moment, science is doing great harm to our planet Earth and destroying and creating climate change and global warming because of many of our scientific, technological, industrial, the way science and technology has been used by commerce and industry is causing climate change. And not only climate change, but also destruction of biodiversity and destruction of our rainforests and the destruction of our oceans, pollution with plastic and suffering to animals. So there are many, many problems are created by technology, which has been invented by scientists. So it's not just pure science that we are talking about. We are talking about the applied science and how it has been used by political and commercial and vested interests. So scientists and scientists have become a kind of tools for exploitation of planet Earth. So scientists have to take that oath, do no harm. And so similarly, I would say not only scientists, but also economists, industrialists, politicians, all of us have to take this oath. We need to take a Hippocratic oath. The moment we come out of the university and the school or university or college, anywhere, before we start any job, before we get into any work, we need to take this Hippocratic oath of doing no harm. That is an oath of non-violence in Jain language, but Hippocratic oath is to do no harm. So we need to learn from climate crisis and resolve that in future, we will not engage in activity which may produce other disastrous consequences similar to climate catastrophe. Faith needs to embrace science, and science needs to embrace faith. They need to embrace each other. Particularly, we religious people, faith people, need to embrace the climate science, because many of us, among many of our even fellow Jains, but many other religious people as well, be they Christians or Islam or Buddhist or something, they have not quite taken the climate change as a great challenge. I'm pleased to say that the Vatican and the Pope Francis is taking quite a leadership in this field, and he is outspokenly standing up for the rights of nature. It's not just the human rights that we have to talk about. Nature also has rights. Now we are trying to go to Mars or to Moon, conquer Moon. First we try to conquer Earth and conquer nature, and now we are trying to conquer Moon. Moon has right to remain free of human interference. So we have no right to go and conquer Moon and land on Mars. We have done a lot of damage to our precious planet Earth, and now we want to make damage on Moon and Mars and many other planets. So we have no such right to do, and we have to respect the rights of nature and rights of other planets as well. So without science, faith, religions, and spirituality can become dogmatic and fundamentalist, and without faith, science can become dangerous and destructive, as we have seen in the climate change issue. There is much that scientists can teach faith leaders as faith leaders can teach scientists. We need to come together in humility and mutual respect and believe, we have to believe that ultimately we are one and the whole cosmos is our country. What is called cosmology. The whole cosmos is our country. Our country is not just India or America or England or France or China or Russia. Our country is the whole cosmos. And our home is not just where we live, our bedroom and bathroom and our living room, but our whole earth is our home. This is why it is called ecos. Ecology, the Greek word ecology, means the knowledge of home, and economy means the management of the planet home. So ecos is home, and so entire planet is our home and our common home. And so we have to take care of this common home with diligence and with compassion and with humility. And so for me, cosmos is my country as a Jain, and our planet Earth is my home as a Jain. And also, as Mahapragyaji said, ahimsa, non-violence is my religion. And in our Western language, we can say love is my religion. And love and non-violence transcend all religious theologies or differences and intellectual gymnastic that we engage in quite often. And so we have to leave those for a while aside and say our religion is not Jain. Our religion is not, as Mahapragyaji said, our religion is not Christianity. Our religion is not Hindu or Muslim or Jewish or whatever it is. Our religion is non-violence. Our religion is love. And all these expressions and labels, like I'm a Jain, I'm a Buddhist, I'm a Christian, I'm this, I'm that, I'm American, I'm black, I'm white, are all just labels. And we have to rise above those labels, and we have to say that humanity is one. And we, as Jains, but as human beings, we respect everybody. And then, of course, we can have a diversity, as I said from the beginning, an ekant. We can have diversity and celebrate diversity and say that it is wonderful to have so many religions, so many languages, so many forms of life, so many nationalities, so many philosophies, so many traditions. This is wonderful. It would be boring if 7 billion people were all Jains. It would be boring if 7 billion people on this earth were all Hindus or Muslims or Christians. It would be boring if 7 billion people were all speaking only one language, English. Diversity is the essence of life. And so we celebrate diversity, but what we have done in our modern world, we have transformed that diversity into divisions. And divisions create conflict, and conflict leads to wars. And therefore, we are spending billions and billions and billions of dollars and pounds and rupees and yens on nuclear weapons and other weapons and wars for no purpose, no reason. And therefore, we need to come to a sensible evolution of consciousness. And evolution of consciousness is in that understanding that we are ultimately one humanity. And ultimately, we are members of one earth. And ultimately, whole of humanity and whole of planet Earth and all living beings have one single future, one destiny. We all have to come and live together. This is my simple understanding as I learned from my great teachers and guru, Acharya Tulsi and Mahapragyaji, and I'm delighted to see Mahendra Kumarji there, Muni Mahendra Kumarji sitting there as my fellow monk, and I was a young monk there. So this is my great pleasure to remember those teachings of Acharya Tulsi and Mahapragya Ji, of that generosity of spirit and the big-heartedness and the big-mindedness and all the sectarianism and all the narrow thinking was all put aside, and anekant and aparigraha and ahimsa, those were the real principles and not all other sectarian values. So I would like to say to this conference that I am honored and delighted to be part of this, and you have great deliberations and great talks. Some of them I heard and I was delighted. And so congratulations for organizing this wonderful conference and dialogue. I'm delighted to be part of it, but we have to show that generosity of spirit and make ahimsa as our religion, and then Jains, everybody will be Jains. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Satish Kumarji. A couple of very interesting questions. The first one is from Suman Kothari ji. How can truth be so many? I understand an ekant principle is that there could be many opinions.
How can, so many opinions, how can, what is the question?
How can truths be many? I guess very early on you're talking about truth and plurality of truth.
As I said, in our, we are not Keval Gyanis and we are not enlightened beings. So we have to practice humility. And in that humility, vinamrata, vinay, beneath, all those beautiful words we have in Hindi and in Jain tradition, we have to be humble. And we don't say that we have the monopoly of truth. I know what is truth and you don't. And therefore I have to tell you what is truth. If you don't accept my truth, then you are wrong. This is arrogance, sheer arrogance. We have to be humble and we say, this is how I understand the truth. This is my experience of truth, but you have your experience. I respect it. Let's have a dialogue. And in dialogue, we exchange ideas and we listen to each other and we say, yes, I see your point. Because, for example, as I said, truth has multifacetedness. There are multifacets. So when you say that something is, so if you take a book and say, this book is brown, that's only one truth. But there are many other things about this truth, this book. I cannot speak that in one go, one sentence, 1 minute, 1 hour. So no truth can be put in language as a whole truth. Only a partial truth we can put in words. One of the Muni, our Buddhamarji, said, Bhasha kya hai? Bhavon ka langdata sa anuvad. That was Buddhamarji. So our language is dualistic. Our language is limited and our intellect is limited. In our intellect and our limited intellect and limited language, we have to practice deep and profound humility and say, this is how I understand, but please tell me what you think and I will listen to you and I'll humbly bow to you and I will think about it and I will contemplate about it. But unless there's a humility, arrogance leads to dogmatism, sectarianism, violence, and anekant is the first principle of non-violence. If you want to be non-violent, ahimsa, do not think that you know all the truth. This is a very, very fundamental challenge of the Jains for the whole world. And this is why we have all these conflicts. We have all these wars because everybody thinks they have got the truth. They have got the democracy. They have got the right economic system. Capitalism is the truth. Communism wrong. Communism is the truth. Capitalism is wrong. And Islam is the truth. Christian is wrong. Hindu is the truth. Muslim is wrong. All that is the arrogance leads to sectarianism, violence, and war and conflicts. So we have to become humble and say, there are many, many truths. And I only see one side of the truth.
Thank you. Another question is from Kamal Nawalakhaji from Bombay. And he's asking, does the doctrine of anekant also accept ekant as a simultaneously existing principle?
Also, read slowly.
Does the doctrine of anekant also accept ekant as a simultaneous principle?
Yes, it is, because it is a paradox. As I said, it's one and it's many. But one is difficult. As I said, wood is one, but wood takes hundreds of forms. Gold is one, but with gold, you can make a bangle, you can have a necklace, you can have bracelet, you can have a ring, you can have an earring, whatever. You can make hundreds of forms. Gold is just an idea. It's a kind of matter. It's a kind of, there's no use to it. So gold is one, but it takes many, many forms. So if you take scientific view, at the time of Big Bang, there was nothing. There was only gas. Then came water. Then came slowly, it took billions of years to get some vegetables, and then billions of years to get some animals. So evolution, according to scientific understanding, has evolved to this diversity of life. And therefore, diversity is anekant. But unity is ekant. Unity is the keval gyan. Unity is the ultimate truth. But ultimate truth has to be realized with the intimate living, everyday living, intimate living, and the absolute truth of ekant or keval gyan has to be in a relative truth, and the relative truth is anekant. And so paradoxically, ekant and anekant, or Vedant and anekant, are complementary to each other. There is no contradiction. Unity and diversity dance together. This is what I said in my talk. So anekant, we include everything and exclude nothing. This is the beauty of anekant. That's all inclusive and nothing exclusive. Whereas once there was only one single truth, then you exclude all other truths. Exclusivism leads to violence and conflict and wars and difficulties. So paradox, yes, and inclusivity, yes. We celebrate all truths.
If Muni Mahendra Kumar ji, would you have a thought on this? आप म्यूट पे हैं.
Yes, Mahendra Kumar ji.
You know, Anekant actually is a metaphysical doctrine. And when we, in our communication, utilize that doctrine, we have to take a recourse to Shadwad and use the word Shad. Shad is not Sayad. Sayad means perhaps. Shad is not Sayad. Shad means from a certain standpoint, from a certain point of view. This is the statement. Another point of view, another statement. So, Shad Asti. At the same time, Shad Nasti. So, in this way, Shadvad also includes Ekantvad. When you use the word Shad, it becomes Ekantvad. At that time, at that particular point of view, that is the truth. And everything else is not. So there is Ekant. But Ekant is not only to be adopted, because this Shadva says, Shad Asti, it may be, it is there from some point of view. Shad Nasti, it is not there from another point of view, like that. So Anekant is a metaphysical principle, and Shadvad is our practical, empirical way of putting that metaphysical principle into our practice. So Anekantvad and Shadvad to go together, and there is the third, Nayavad. Nayavad means again a certain thing can be described from one point of view in one way, and it will be described in another way from another point of view. Like that, Nayavad is also used there, and Nayavad is a logical application of Anekantvad in our day-to-day communication. So in this way, the Jain principles of Anekantvad, Shadvad, and Nayavad.
Very good. I agree. I think that's a very good explanation. I meant to mention Shadvad, and Shadvad makes the Anekant much more practical. So Shadvad is that this is one point of view. From one point of view, you see something. You look at a tree, And there are so many facts about a tree. What you can only say one point of view at one particular time, and that's a Shadvad. So Shadvad and Naivad, I agree with that. Together make a very big picture. But I only talked about Anekant because that is the beginning, that is the fundamental beginning point. But it leads to Shadvad and Naivad. Thank you very much, Muni Mahendra Kumarji. Yeah, next question.
This one is from Abhay Jain ji. And he's asking from, I think, from a spiritual and a psychological point of view, what is consciousness?
Consciousness is the invisible.
Just 1 minute. This is question of Acharya Shri Kanak Nandi ji.
Okay. Can I speak?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, consciousness is the ground. Consciousness is the ground of all existence. From a spiritual point of view, like in the space, as a kind of metaphor or a kind of comparison, everything exists in space. A tree, a house, a human being, an animal, a bird, everything exists in space. In the same way, there is something beyond that space in a spiritual point of view, and that is consciousness. And everything exists in consciousness. All our religions, our philosophies, our ideas, our imagination, our poetry, our art, our culture, our everything physical and non-physical, everything exists in consciousness. So consciousness is the background. Consciousness is the, like you have a painting, and you see the flowers in the painting, or you see a human being on a painting, but where is that painting? What is the background? What is the ground of that painting? It's a canvas, but you don't look at the canvas. You don't think about the canvas. Canvas is only as a kind of there. You look at the painting. So we look at the world, we look at nations, we look at religions, we look at art, culture, music, philosophy, religions, science, everything we look at. But what is behind all that? One single, total, unexplainable, beyond language, beyond intellect, only available to Keval Gyanis, and that is consciousness. Consciousness is the ground of all beings. That is the reality. That is the truth. The existence is all in consciousness. Like all our planets exist in space, and moons exist in space, Mars in space, sun in space, the whole cosmos, whole universe in space. But where is that space? We don't measure it. We don't see it. It's only there. We know it, but we don't see it. So we go beyond that even. Time, space, beyond time and space is the consciousness. And that consciousness is something you cannot measure. And that's a kind of spiritual reality. So when you come to realize yourself that I am pure consciousness, and so everything is happening in me, all my ideas, my thinking, my habits, my beliefs, my practices, they are all there. But beyond all that is pure consciousness, where there's no contamination, no karma, no dharma, no philosophy, no religion, something pure and simple as water is clean and pure, as air is clean and pure. So even beyond water, air, and space is consciousness, which is even more absolute pure situation. That is consciousness. And so we need to realize, and that's, you can say in Hindu language, Brahman, that is a Brahman. That is a kind of totality of the existence. Everything exists in Brahman, in Hindu language. So we can say everything exists in consciousness. And I need to have that pure consciousness realization. And the moment I realize that, then I am able to let go of all my anger, fear, greed, pride, arrogance, labels, separation, dualism, conflict, all the things with which I suffer, and all the dukkha's, all the kind of pain and all the misery that I suffer of separation and meeting and friendship and marriage and father and mother and children, they're all happening in something beyond our control. And that's a pure consciousness. So the moment I realize I am pure consciousness, I am free. That is Siddha. That is moksha. The moment you realize I am free, you are beyond your body, you're beyond your mind, you're beyond your concept, beyond your intellect, beyond your analysis, beyond everything. Gate, gate, para, it's a heart sutra in Buddhism. Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhi swaha. That is the pure consciousness, state of pure consciousness. So if we can reach that, that is the aim of all human endeavors, to reach that state of pure consciousness where we let go of all our bondage and all our attachments, and we just are, and as pure and as beautiful and as comfortable and as happy as ever could be. That is, to me, spiritual understanding of consciousness.
So next, Dharam Kumarji, and then Mahendra Muniji. Dharamchandji.
Yes. There is one question from Satish Kumarji. He told that there is no final truth. So how can we say that there is no final truth? If it is right, then Bhagwan Mahavir did know this final truth or not? One. I want to say that he has mixed truth and reality, both. Reality is multidimensional, but truth is not multidimensional. Truth is not metaphysical, as told by Muni Mahendra Kumarji. And the other question is, he told that science, that spirituality is losing without science. It can't be said. The spirituality is losing without science. It is not possible, I think, because science deals with materialistic world, and the spirituality deals with the merely consciousness, pure consciousness. So there is difference between the objects of the both branches of knowledge. So there is not losing, I think, spirituality is not losing without science.
Okay.
So explanation about this too.
First of all, I would say yes. Mahavir, Bhagwan Mahavir, I would say yes. He knew the ultimate truth. And what he knew ultimate truth is that there is no ultimate truth. And this is the ultimate truth. And so he knew it. And that's a Keval Gyan. When you rise above all divisions, all conflicts, all separations, all dualities, and you see the kind of pure consciousness. So Bhagwan Mahavir knew, but we are not Bhagwan Mahavir. And this is why Jains have developed the idea of Anekant and Shadvad, where we say that whatever truth there may be one truth, but that you cannot put in words or in your intellectual understanding or in your analysis. Whatever you say is only a point of view that you are saying. And therefore, yes, Mahavir knew the ultimate truth maybe, but we are not Mahavir. We are talking about you and me and ourselves in our real life here. That's an abstract idea, whether Mahavir knew or not knew. I mean, you can say he knew, I can say he knew, but that is also one point of view. And therefore, in my understanding, as I said, gold is one, but there are many, many forms. Gold is no good if it does not take a form. And that form is either a bangle or a ring or a necklace or some sort of form which you can use. So truth is big, one gold, one big truth. But that truth it's no use to us. We have to analyze something practical, something lived in our lives. And that life can be lived only with the partial truth, one particular part of truth. And we cannot live with the whole truth. So I would say, in my humility and my humble understanding, that what I know is a truth, and what you say may be another truth, and there are many truths, and a final truth, who knows? So this is not. I want to leave it at ambiguity. A little bit of ambiguity is also good. Leave it a bit of ambiguity and not come to a final conclusion as if this is the final truth. Second question of science and spirit. I would say, and this may be controversial, but without matter, spirit does not exist. And if
without science,
without matter, science is about matter. Science is concerned with matter. Spirituality is concerned with the spirit, metaphysical or non-material. But non-material has to deal with the material. Our body without spirit is useless. And without body, spirit is also useless. Because what do you do with the spirit if there's no body? I mean, if I have no mouth to speak, my speech will be useless. So in order to have ideas, in order to have truth, you have to have a spirit, you have to use, I mean, I want to drink water. Water is very important, but without the glass, water cannot be drunk. And without water, glass is useless. And without glass, without water is useless. Although we can say water, 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 but there's not a drop to drink because there's no glass. So you need glass and water together. So this is the marriage of science and spirituality. It's a marriage of metaphysics and physics. It's a science and spirituality coming together and supporting each other. One without other is completely useless in real life. It's only an idea. You can say pure idea of science. You can have an idea of water, but in order to drink water, to make it practical and satisfy your thirst, you need a container, you need a vessel, you need a ghada, you need a jug, you need a glass, you need a pot to put the water in, to cook the food. Just the idea of water is not going to quench your thirst. So the idea of spirit is not going to do anything to you. So to be practical, you have to say science and spirituality have to come together. Without each other, like metal and spirit have to come together. Without them coming together, they cannot be any use in our daily life.
Satish, what I'll do is there are some alternate thoughts too. So I don't see Acharya Kanaknandiji. Are you here, Acharya Kanaknandiji? Can you hear us?
Yes. Yes, Acharya Kanaknandiji is here, but he is in Mohan Vrata. So he cannot speak now.
All right. So no, this is okay. He had a counter thought. So I would also defer to anybody else who would have a counter opinion to this, because it's obvious from the chat that there's a plurality of thought. Mahendra Moniji?
Hello. Yes, again we come to Anekant here also. Science and spirituality, these two are diverse disciplines. In the field of science, everything deals with what is actually perceived, observed, and then the conclusion is made. In the field of spirituality, we depend upon direct apprehension and not sensory knowledge. This is the difference in the approach of science and in the approach of philosophy or darshan or spirituality. But spirituality itself says that because as far as the life is concerned, as far as the existence of the soul in the mundane life, that is worldly existence, soul cannot exist without matter. There are three bodies at least: Audaric body, Tejas body, and Karman body, with every living being. So now what we talk or what our reference is, Dharamchandji will pay attention to this. Now the reference is regarding this present world, this mundane existence in which we live. We have to take the health of the body. You know, it has been said in the Uttarajan Sutra that the soul is the sailor and the body is the boat. The soul is the sailor and the body is the boat. So if you want to go across this ocean of existence, ocean of transmigration, you have to take the help of the boat. That is, the sailor with the help of the boat goes across this existence or this mundane existence and reaches the salvation. In this sense, again relatively, again in the light of Anekan, when Satish Kumarji says that science needs spirituality, in the same way, spirituality needs science. It means only that in order to achieve salvation, moksha, we have to take help of the organic body. Without the aid of this human body, the soul cannot become free from the clutches of the karmic bondage. In that sense, science needs spirituality and spirituality needs science. That is a relative statement and it is to be understood in that perspective only. I think I'm clear.
Thank you very, very much. Really
Thank you. That's a well explained. Well explained. Thank you very much. Perfect.
Thank you. And you know, with that, we come to the end of our keynote session. We will move to, thank you again, Satish Kumarji. And now we move to Samni Chaitanya Pragyaji. She is a senior disciple in the Jain Shwetambar Therapant tradition. She is a visiting professor at the Florida International University in Miami. She was a former head of Department of JCRP at the Jain Vishwa Bharati in Ladno, and she's also the founding director of the Bhagwan Mahavir International Research Center, the JVB. Chaitanya Pragyaji?
Yes, I am here.
The floor is yours.
Yes. Thanks for your nice introduction. And all the esteemed delegates, speakers, Honorable Munishi Mahendra Kumarji, Honorable Munishi Acharya Shri Kanak Nandiji Maharaj, and all other monks and nuns who are joining or listening to this particular conference. Today's my topic is definition, structure, function, and cognitive theories of consciousness. Before going to particular theories and all these different concepts, I would like to say why we have thought of this particular conference on consciousness. So we would see that many renowned scientists in the world have come to this conclusion that every phenomena in the universe cannot be explained just by physical processes involving matter. And thus there is a need to think beyond matter. This list of scientists, which I have given in the below, includes several Nobel laureates, and we quote a few of them here to strengthen the point. Schrödinger, who is the physics Nobel laureate, 1933, he writes, "Mind has erected the objective outside world of the natural philosopher out of its own stuff." Wingard has said that we are not machines. If man were a machine, then it should be possible to describe him in terms of atoms and molecules. And I don't think that is possible. Wingard also mentions that consciousness is a non-physical entity. Josephson, he writes that this Bohm views quantum mechanics as providing an indication that there is unobserved order in nature. This now connects back to what I was saying much earlier. That is, that if we want to put God into science, then we have to say there is an intelligence behind the scenes which is creating order, at least living things order than the non-living things living things less order than they would have been without the intelligence being present. The next, George Ward, he writes that each of us has a share in Brahman, the Atman, the essential self, ageless, imperishable. And he writes that Tattvamasi, thou art that. This is the very famous statement of Upanishads. That is the stuff of the universe. And the Albert Einstein, he writes that I believe in Spinoza's God. So all these scientists, there are 27 in the list who are Nobel laureates and who believe that there should be some different entities in the universe. Without understanding that, we cannot explain many complications of our scientific research. So this is the main thing. This is the main point, thinking this point in the mind. We have planned for this particular conference on consciousness, since Jainism has a lot to say in this particular field. And what Jainism says, we would try to understand in the next slides. So there is a need to synthesize the scientific studies of consciousness with the study of Jainism about the consciousness. Definition, so far as Professor Narendra Bhandari, he is very much curious about the definition, about the structure, about the function of consciousness, and that's why I have taken this particular topic, keeping his questions in my mind. So what is consciousness? In Jainism, whenever we find any reference in regard to consciousness, there are certain terminology, particular terminology or technical terms which come again and again. And I found that the concept of consciousness, which is today known as Chaitanya in Hindi language, but in the Jain scriptures, mostly they use the word upayoga. That is the cognitive ability or cognitive activities to explain the whole concept of consciousness. And at some places, we find the term jnana. So Gyan also stands for consciousness, also stands for the function of consciousness. So in this way, there are three main terms in Jain literature and in the entire corpus of Jain literature, which stand especially for consciousness, to understand the whole concept of consciousness. Now, how we would define the consciousness? Because it is something non-physical, something non-material, so how it can be understood in a proper way. So in Jainism, especially the Bhagavati Sutra and all the other scriptures, wherever there is some explanation about the living entities, then it is said that it is Oga Lakhanenam Jive. Who is soul? Who is living entity? Who has the characteristic of knowing? So the defining characteristic of a soul is consciousness, cognitive activity, and it works all the times in all different forms of life. It is inalienable characteristic of the jiva, of soul, however undeveloped it may be. Karmic matter was the light of consciousness. So why this consciousness has not developed in a fullest form or in its full form in all the living beings, when Jainism believes that all souls are equal, all have the same potentials, all have same kind of knowledge in them inherited. So why it is not developed? So we have already listened to Professor Kachara. He has explained very well the theory of karma, that there is a karmic dust which is hindering or which is obstructing our inner spiritual powers, including the consciousness. So this is known as Jnana Varniya karma in technical terms, that this is special the karma which is responsible for obstructing our full potential of consciousness. And that's why there is variations in development of consciousness in different living beings. Apart from Jnana Varniya karma, there is another karma which is Darshana Varniya karma. And there is one karma which is Mohani karma, which is polluting our consciousness, misguiding our consciousness. So these are different karmic materials which are affecting our inner consciousness or our development of inner consciousness. And we have to pay attention to that. And that's why Jainism has gone very deep into the study of karmic philosophy to understand the power of inner consciousness and how it is being defiled by this karmic dust and how you can remove it. And for that, in Jainism, there are so many rigorous ethical practices just to remove this karmic dust from inner consciousness. So this inner consciousness, okay. It is just getting stuck.
We can hear you.
Okay, yeah, you are hearing, but the slides are not moving. That's okay. So now we have got that consciousness has very intimate relation with the soul. In present scientific studies, the scientists are trying to analyze the conscious activities through they are trying to understand all these new knowledge activities or cognitive behavior of living beings through different neurological studies or quantum physics laws. But we have to understand that consciousness is mainly connected with our inner self. It is the main power of our inner self. And that's why Jainism has discussed these theories, theory of consciousness in very different theories, like epistemological theories, logical theories, physiological theories, biological theories, and psychological theories. So Jainism has given very much thought to understand the consciousness at all these different physical levels and also the spiritual levels. And it is said that this knowledge power is not only found in the developed human beings who have brain or mind or understanding or reasoning or logic, but in the smallest living being also there is a certain amount of consciousness is always awakened. In Nandi Sutra it is said, Sabba Jivanam Piyanam Akharasa Anantamo Havonichu Hadiyo Havai. Jai Punasovi Avar Jai Tenam Jivo Ajivatam Pavicha. It means the infinite part of infinite energy of consciousness is always awakened, even in the smallest living being, who is microbe or virus or whatever name you can give it. Or in Jainism, it is said Nigot. The smallest living being is not a Nigot. In that Nigot is also infinite part of this infinite power of consciousness is always awakened. And this is why soul and consciousness are said as inseparable phenomena. Consciousness without soul and soul without consciousness are impossible. Due to this inseparable relationship, which is called Tadatmya Sambandh in philosophical term, soul and consciousness are taken sometimes in one sense or as inter-exchangeable terms, as it is found in the particular, in the words of Tirthankar Mahavir in the Acharang. He says, Je Aya se Vinnaya, Je Vinnaya se Aya, Jain Vijanati se Aya. It means a soul is one who knows and one who knows is soul, through which one knows is soul. In the commentary of Acharang, it is said that through which one knows is consciousness or knowledge. So it means consciousness and soul are intimate. They are not disconnected or two different phenomena. They are one and the same. Now we would see that when we go through all the discussions on consciousness in our scriptures and philosophical texts and many logical texts, we find that the consciousness works at two levels. The first level is sensory. The second level is extrasensory. The sensory level can also be said as mediate because it works through mind, body, and senses. And the second one is called extrasensory perception, under which Avadhigyan, Manapariyan, and Kevalgyan come. And the sensory, under the sensory perception or sensory knowledge, we have two types of knowledge. One is called Matigyan and Shrutigyan. So we find that these kind of 5 types of basic knowledge or cognitions have been discussed very widely, very minutely, and with all critical, critical analysis, that these 2 types of knowledge are always found in all the living beings. There may be the second extrasensory perception cannot be easily available in the lower level of living beings, they are always found in higher level of living beings. But knowledge, potentially they are having this capacity of knowledge also. So there are so many scriptures and philosophical texts in which we can find this detailed discussion about the consciousness, all these types of knowledges. Now we would see that there are two types of main function of consciousness. One is called perception. The technical term for perception is darshan. And second one is called knowledge. And for this, we find the word jnana. So jnana and darshan, these are two main function or main properties of consciousness. And there are certain theories in Pragyapana Sutra and also in other scriptures. So we find one general, I say it is general theory of cognition. And under this particular theory, the Jain scriptures talk about different types of knowledge and perceptions. So there are two types of knowledge, right knowledge, wrong knowledge, and there is one theory which talks about the perceptions. So we would see that right knowledge means the knowledge which ultimately leads you to liberation or inspire you to grow spiritually or innerly. So that knowledge is recognized as in five types. One is perceptual cognition, which is already I have mentioned as Matigyan. Second is articulate knowledge, that is Shrutagyan. Third is clairvoyance, that comes under extrasensory knowledge. So that is clairvoyance. For that particular term is Avadhigyan, mind reading, Manahaparyogyan, and the last one is omniscience, that is called perfect or pure knowledge. Similarly, there are three knowledge which are subject to error also. There may be the possibility to be wrong in the case of these three particular knowledge. One is perceptual cognition, other one is articulate knowledge, and third one is clairvoyance. So though clairvoyance is a kind of extrasensory perception, but there is also possibility to be wrong due to perverted knowledge, effect of Mohani karma. So these are three perverted knowledge or wrong knowledge or erroneous knowledge. And next is perception. Under the theory of perceptions, there are four types of perceptions have been discussed in Jain literature. One is visual perception, non-visual perception, clairvoyant perception, and omniperception. Now we would see, especially in Pragyapana Sutra, there is one theory that is called Pashyata. And I say it a special theory of cognition. Why it is so? According to Pragyapana Sutra, we have knowledge. We have discussed about 12 types of upayogas, in which we may have knowledge about the present thing, and we may have knowledge about all the things of all the three times. We can think of the things of the past, present, and future also. So there are possibilities in upayoga especially, that we can just get the knowledge of the things which are present only. And it may be that in some cases we can get the knowledge about the past and future also through those knowledges. But in Pashyata, it is said that we have in this particular theory or concept, only those knowledges have been included which can see the reality in all the three periods, not only in the present, but past and future also. So under this particular theory, Pragyapana Sutra says that it is only articulate knowledge, clairvoyance, and mind reading, and omniscience. These four knowledge can be considered under this particular Pashyata theory, but not perceptual cognition, because mostly the perceptual cognition is confined to the present reality and not about the past and future, though there is possibility, but it is not sure. Similarly, in this Pashyata theory, it is said that the articulate knowledge and clairvoyance, these two perverted knowledge can also be considered, because they are able to see the reality in the past, present, and future in all the three periods. Similarly, perception, visual perception, clairvoyant, and omniperception, these perceptions have been accepted in this particular theory, keeping this in the mind that visual perception is more clearer than non-visual perception. So there are two conditions for being pashyata, being the knowledge under this pashyata concept, that the knowledge should be capable to know the reality, not only in the past, the present, but in the past and future also. And it must be more clear, more distinct than what is discussed under the theory of Upayoga. So this is a very new concept for me also. I have read first time when I have started reading the Pragyapna Sutra, that they have discussed that Pashyata is somehow different in that sense. Now you would see that there are certain habits, or we can say instinctive knowledge, which is found in all the living beings. And according to Jainism, there are 10 types of such instincts which are found in all living beings. Number may be less or all the 10. But we have found these type of 10 instinctive knowledge in all the living beings, especially in the worldly living beings. One is ahar sangya, that is called, technically it is known as sangya. So sangya means something desire, some kind of desire, and at the same time you have the knowledge of that desire, what kind of thing you are desiring, how you can get it. So those instinctive knowledge are recognized as 10 sangyas. And the first sangya is ahar sangya, bhai sangya, maithun sangya, parigraha, krodh, man, maya, lobh and og sangya. So you would find here ahar means hunger, the desire, the feeling which we get as hunger. We see that, oh, I am feeling this hunger, and that's why we look for particular things. We are not taught that what we have to eat or what we have not to eat, but from our own inner understanding, we look for the things which are suitable for our body. So that kind of knowledge comes automatic through particular this sangya. Similarly, we have the sense of fear, sex, anger, ego, deceit, greed. These are the all different types of emotions which emerge in us. And in that state, we automatically take action, whatever is appropriate in that condition, and we think it is appropriate. It may be appropriate, it may not be. In the last two sangyas, I want to say something about it, that is Loka Sangya and Oga Sangya. And we find that these are two sangyas which are related especially to the consciousness. I have finished the time. Okay. So within 2 minutes, I want to finish it. So there are so many things I cannot cover all in one lecture. There are so many perceptual cognition. There are so many varieties and so many different types of perceptual cognitions, and they have been discussed very intensively or very deeply or minutely. And our Dr. Ashok Jain and what we say Jaipat Singh ji and Dev Kumar, he has touched very efficiently and in the light of science. I'm not going into detail. And just we have to see that in Jain scriptures, it is said that the senses have so much power to know. And it is said that eyes can see the things from 1 lakh yojan distance. The ears can listen to the words which are coming from 12 yojan distance. And nose can smell the things which is coming from very 9 yojan distance. Or it can also smell the things which are coming sometimes 400 and 500 yojans distance. So these type of discussions have been shown in the scriptures, that how much capability we have to know, even if we are knowing things at sensory level. There is articulate knowledge. There are 10 types of articulate knowledge. I'm not, since I have not so much time, just we have say clairvoyance. Clairvoyance is a extrasensory perception, and it is also obtained through, sometimes through genesis. Just we have taken birth in particular place, and that's why this knowledge appears in us. in us, and it can also appear by undergoing some spiritual hard practices. It may be penance, it may be austerities, it may be ethical values which we follow. And due to that, if we get purity, this kind of knowledge emerges in us. So there are so many types of clairvoyance which can emerge, and they emerge from very different parts of our body sometimes. Sometimes from front parts, sometimes from big parts, sometimes from whole body. So this kind of clairvoyance also is there. And it has also very different categories, how much you can know. And for that, there is rigorous discussion in Shatkhandagam especially. You will find all these details from there. Mind reading knowledge is especially meant for reading the mind of others. And you can, if you have this capacity or this type of knowledge, you can know what others are thinking about anything. So that kind of knowledge, and this kind of knowledge is also discussed in some other traditions. So now the last one is the Keval Gyan, which is called omniscience, and it is also of two types, Bhavastha Keval Gyan and Siddha Keval Gyan. So Bhavastha Keval Gyan means if you are in human body, you are conscious. Okay.
I'm trying to keep it on time, so your concluding thoughts, please.
Okay, so human consciousness can evolve to the fullest state, and that is the Keval Gyan. So that can be achieved by rigorous practice of spirituality, and that can be done. And after liberation, this knowledge also remains in the soul. So, and these are very important concepts. If from philosophical point of view, I'm not going into detail. I'm finishing my talk here. And there are a lot of things which I could not cover in the short time.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And everyone, in the interest of time, what we'll do is we'll take all the questions after the second speaker in the panel session. All right, so keep the questions coming. There's some very interesting questions coming. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Narendra Bhandari ji, Professor Narendra Bhandari. He's a space scientist. He's also on the NASA team for the gamma ray analysis of the OSIRIS-REx sample. He holds the chair of science at the Spirituality Research Institute in Ahmedabad and is the president of the Jain Academy of Scholars. He's carried out research work at the University of California, San Diego, and has been a senior professor at the Physical Research Lab, Department of Space in Ahmedabad. He was the chair of Geocosmophysics Division there. He started and chaired the ISRO planetary sessions and exploration program and made pioneering contributions to the India's first mission on moon, the Chandrayaan-1, and was also responsible for conceiving and defining its science objectives. He is very widely published. Dr. Bhandari, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. As we have heard, Anekantwad is synonymous with the Jainism. I think there were very useful discussion in the first session, as well as it was covered by the learned speaker Satish Kumarji, and we had the benefit of comments by Munishi Mahendra Kumarji. So my job has become easier here, but I would like to present, since Anekantwad means different points of view, I may as well present another point of view about Anekantwad, because this is very vital. Now, what I think is that the most important thing in life is to see what is real and what appears as real but is not real. So we have to distinguish between real and what is apparent. And that is where Anekantwad comes into play. And I'll discuss mostly, because other aspects have been covered, I'll discuss it in context of quantum physics. Now, this Anekantwad is, of course, as you have heard already, it is one of the most beautiful gifts of Jain thought to the world philosophy. But the beauty of it is it is not disprovable. This is the only law which you cannot disprove. All other laws, right from Newton's law of gravity or Maxwell's law of electromagnetism, can be proved wrong or modified. But this law is very beautiful, because if you have evidence to contradict it, that becomes a part of it. The contradiction itself is a part of the law. Now, an Ekantavad, as you have heard, is a multiple manifestation, and it consists of 4 parts actually. It's an umbrella term used for 4 parts. An Ekantvad, Syadvad has been mentioned also, perspectivism or Naivad, and the 7 modes of existence. So, an Ekantvad is the manifestation of multiple facet of the same thing, and I'll explain it only a little bit. But Syadvad has not much been covered, and it is different from an Ekantavad, but it is not doubtability, confusion, or uncertainty, as Munishi just pointed out. Now, Naivad is various points of view. So all these together and Sabbangi are given this umbrella term of Anekantvad. Now, application has been mentioned, so I will not cover that. Next slide, please. Oh, you are showing the slides there? Okay, I thought I'll share the screen. Okay, according to Jainism, let me point out my viewpoint. There are only 3 reals in the world, and Jainism has done much research in finding out what is real and what is truth. There is an objective universe that is to be known, what we call gay, and that is covered by Anekantvad. There is a observer who sees things from different points of view, and that comes under Naivad. And there is the Gyan, or the knowledge, which is covered by Syadvad. So these 3 things, multiplicity of modes of substances, that is Anekantvad, multiplicity of views is perspectivism, that is the way an observer sees the world, and multiplicity of truth, that there is no one truth, is the Gyan, and that is how we look at the world. Next one, please. There is another concept which I have to introduce, but and that is Anekantvad cannot be stretched. I think we should remember while applying it that it cannot be stretched to include falsehood. You can't say somebody tells you something which is wrong, that, okay, let us accept it because of Anekantvad. That is not true. If a wall is black or white, there is only one truth. You can't say that this is his opinion and let us accept it. So you cannot stretch Anekantvad to cover falsehood. The second point is it cannot be applied to coarse things. It can only be applied to subtle things. Coarse things follow determinism, and fine things follow Anekantvad. So it is actually the last resort, not the first resort in any dispute or any argument. Next slide, please. Now, there is another concept which we must understand before we come to these various doctrines. Science, unfortunately, we have confronted in this discussion what I heard, science with spirituality. That is not the correct approach. It should be science and spirituality, as some learned speakers point out, but there is a basic difference. Science is divided into 2 parts, unknown and known. As more and more we study, the unknown is converted into known, and they hope that one day everything will be known. But that is not true with Jain philosophy. Jain philosophy believes that there is a known, there is an unknown, and there is a unknowable by your sensory organs, or there is something which is indescribable. So this concept of indescribable is embedded in unknowability. So unknown, known, and unknowable, these are the three aspects. Next one, please. Now I go a little bit into the history. The earlier Tirthankars talked about Asti, Nasti, Pravad, and they said existence and non-existence. And then Syadvad was a conditional description, Naivad is contextual viewpoints, and Saptabhangi is 7 modes of existence. Now, Syadvad is actually what Bhagwan Mahavir told, as mentioned in Sutra Kritang. He told his disciples that please use Syat because you have taken an oath to tell the truth. So you must tell the truth. If you don't use Syat, it will become false. Now, Buddhists were the first one to assign this Anekantavad to Jains because this is a beautiful doctrine. And the earliest reference comes by Bhadrabahu, Swami Bhadrabahu in 433 to 357 BCE. And later on, Siddhasen Devakar talked about Syadvad, and Acharya Samant Bhadra gives a full exposition of the 7 parts of existence, Saptabhangi and Syadvad, in his treatise on Aptamimamsa. So this logic was being followed in India for a long time. It was the basis of Indian logic, but in the 12th century, it got isolated. And as other invaders came in, this was forgotten and we lost its track. But more recently, next slide, please. There are some scholars, next slide. Some scholars like P.C. Mahalanobis, D.S. Kothari, Haldane, Ramchandran, I mentioned them. They have used this thing in modern era in 1950s and 60s, and they have applied it to logic. And Kurt Gödel and Roger Penrose, they talk about this in a different context. I'll come to that. But Jain Ramchandran has actually, you know, these present day computers are based on binary system that is 0, 1, yes or no. But he developed and published a series of papers on Syad Nyay system, SNS, what he calls it, as a computer logic. And now, of course, the quantum computers are coming. So this multiple solutions as possible, but still the 7 modes of existence have not been worked out. And Dr. D.S. Kothari has used it in terms of quantum physics, and that will be the thrust of my talk today. Next one, please. In the next slide, I want to mention that Anekantvad includes some scientific concepts, that is limits of knowledge by Gödel. Gödel has 2 theorems of incompleteness. He says nothing complete can be described. Nothing can be described completely, I mean. And in quantum mechanics, complementarity, particle wave duality, probability theory, and paradoxes can be explained based on Anekantvad. Now, what is complementarity? There are 3 scientists I would like to quote in this short time. One is Schrödinger, the other is Heisenberg, and the third one is Niels Bohr. What Niels Bohr said is the same thing what is written in Syadvad, that a truth can be falsified, but a profound truth, when it is falsified, that becomes another profound truth. That is, it becomes a part of a profound truth. And he devised a word called complementarity, that is complementing 2 properties, like in particle and wave. If you take a, what I say, a photon a photon of light. It sometimes behaves as a particle, like a grain of sand, like a bullet of a gun, and sometimes as a wave, as a ripple in the pond when you throw a stone. So how can a particle and wave, both properties, be associated with one photon or electron or any particle? That was a contention of debate for many decades in the West, but this is very clearly stated in our scriptures that opposites give you a complete view. And they took several decades to come to the conclusion that complementarity, and that is what Niels Bohr explained everything based on that. So next one, please. So you see, I am not talking about application. I am not talking about coarse phenomena, but I am trying to tell that Anekantvad is the nature of things. Syadvad is a part of the nature of things. And let us not go into all these complicated things, but Heisenberg gave a principle called uncertainty principle, that if you know something about a particle, you can't know other properties. If you know about its velocity, you can't know about its position. If you know about its energy, you don't know at what time it had that. And this Planck length is just like Pradesha. Planck time is like Samay, 10 to minus 44 seconds. At that level, the Planck's physics tells us that everything becomes uncertain. The laws of physics are not valid in that small domain of a Pradesha or a small time of a Samay. And mind, it is 1 billion 5 times. That is how many zeros? 10 to minus 44. So there's a limits to what we can know. And this limit also come from another point of view, that is how much universe we can see. We cannot see the whole universe. You can only see the universe from where the light comes to you, and that is about 46.5 billion light years. Beyond that, what lies, we cannot see. And brain is another funny object. As we study, the brain gets updated. So it is not a perfect thing that what you learn from brain is completely true. What you learn from brain again feeds back to the brain, and brain becomes more perfect and can learn better things. So this you cannot, these give us the limit of what I say, knowledge we can get from sensory organs or the brain. Next one, please. Next one. So you see, next one, please. Next slide. There is a limit to what we can know. And I can only quote Acharya Amrit Chandra, who has very beautifully defined Anekantvad. Any real object in the world is existent and non-existent, one and many. This question was asked whether it is Ekantvad or Anekantvad. So he answers it. Eternal or non-eternal, describable and indescribable, neither this nor that, but both, this as well as that. In terms of what? In terms of its swabhav, its nature, in terms of time, in terms of space, and in terms of material. That is what it is made of. That is how Acharya Amrit Chandra has defined this Anekantvad, and I think it is very beautiful. Now, Munishi Mahendra Kumarji explained to me this because I had some difficulty in understanding. He said everything X in the universe, whether it is living or non-living, is made of two things. E is the essence, which is permanent, and M is the mode, which is changing all the time. Now, X is equal to E plus M, which is a function of time, and mode is changing. The Vedantists believe that everything is essence, never changing, and the Buddhists believe that everything is changing, kshanik, transient. Now, this is can be defined as multifoldedness, multifacetedness, multi-layered, non-absolutism, relativism, etc., etc., pluralism, and in physics we call it complementarity. So you see, it goes to the basic nature of things. And next one, please. The beauty about Anekantvad is that one who understands some Anekantvad, it is written in Samaysar, has the right to go to moksha. So you can't, it is very important. I mean, you can't go to moksha unless you understand and practice Anekantvad. Now, this is a slide to show particle wave duality. There is a spot, there is a hole in a church glass, and sunlight comes in and makes a spot. So they saw one spot when there was one hole. After some time, there was another hole made by weathering, and then this spot disappeared. Actually, they were expecting two spots, but instead a waveform came, increase in intensity and decrease in intensity like that. And the beauty about quantum mechanics is that that particle does not exist till it is observed. Unless you observe an electron, it does not really exist there. Well, and it will exist if you want to have an experiment to test it as an electron, as a particle, it will exist as particle. If you make an instrument for wave, it will exist as wave. So this is the beauty of particle physics, of particle wave duality, and that is what they mean by saying that there are multiple truths. Next one, please. So I quoted Heisenberg, Schrodinger, and Niels Bohr. They are the all helped in building the quantum mechanics in the last century. But we can look at Anekantvad in another way. And the way is that as we go down from a coarse object, like let's say a table, it has only few properties. It has a shape and matter and color and so on. But if you go down to electron level, it will have charge, it will have magnetism, it will have quantum numbers, it will have wave nature, it will have spin, it will have parity. You go to quarks, it will have color, and so on. So new properties emerge as we go down to subtle and more subtle particle stages. So that is Anekantvad. New modes will appear as you go to finer and finer particles. And this is, I'm talking physics only. Next, please. So complementarity is same as Anekantvad, what Niels Bohr said, and he of course didn't know about Anekantvad. So he showed it by the Chinese yin and yang, a black and white fish with black eye and black fish with white eye, that everything has two aspects. But Anekantvad goes much beyond it. It says multiple aspects. Next one, please. Next slide. Now we come to more fundamental thing. The Syadvad is more fundamental in some ways. And again, I come to Acharya Amrit Chandra, who says that the law which denies other laws, and that is infallible law, उसे स्यात कहा गया है, जो सदा नियम का निषेध करता है और निपात रूप से सिद्ध है. निपात मीन्स अनफॉलेबल, उसे स्यात कहा गया, वह वस्तु का सापेक्ष सिद्ध करता है. So the only statement one can make with certainty is that no proposition can be made with certainty. This was, I think, told also in a similar way by Satish Kumarji. And Niels Bohr put it, as I told, that opposite of a true statement is a false statement, but opposite of a profound truth is usually another profound truth. So it doesn't mean ambiguity, confusion, or uncertainty, but that is how the nature is. Next one, please. So let us try to understand and distinguish Anekantvad, Syadvad, and Naivad. So no proposition is absolute or complete truth. There is no one truth. No proposition is complete. truth, because deeper one goes, more revelation will be there. And nature exists as multiple layers, what Bohm said as implicate order. He was also a proponent of quantum mechanics. And we come to the property indescribable, avyaktavya. It cannot be described. That is a Jain concept which is very much in use nowadays. So no proposition is absolute or completely false. Some amount of truth exists in every realization, but as I mentioned, only at a subtle level, not at a coarse level. Next one, please. Now I come to the Naivad, and this, of course, everybody is familiar with, the elephant and the 6 blind men. And I just written in a poetic form here that 6 stubborn Indian men, not able to see, feeling an elephant wherever they can, formed an opinion unyielding and strong. Each was partly in the right, but alas, all were in the wrong. So any partial view, next slide. Any partial view will be incomplete and wrong. Incomplete and it will not describe. Now take a simple thing. There's the painting by M.C. Aisher. It's called Fishes and Birds. But whether it is fishes or birds or both or neither or going to the left or right, and it cannot be described. This is indescribability. When a Buddhist monk was asked to explain this concept, what he did is he put mirrors. Yes, I'll just close it. He just put mirrors all around in a room at floor and top and sides and windows everywhere, mirrors, and put Buddha as embodiment of truth. And as you enter, you see different faces. They are incomplete. They some shows back, some shows top, some shows bottom. So can I come to the last slide, please? Go to the next slide. Please, next slide. I wish I could do that. I would have saved. I think Dr. Kothari explained it in quantum mechanics, and he got these 7 solutions by keeping an electron in a box with a partition. And he said either it can be here, or neither here nor here, or both places, and so on. So this agrees with Saptabhangi. Next one, please. So as we go to particle physics, next one. Please go to 2 or 3 slides so that we come to the final slide. So it can also explain lots of paradoxes. These are Greek paradoxes. In India, we didn't have paradoxes because, yes, stop here. Because the Greeks didn't know anekantvad and neither they knew indescribability. So if a man says that I always tell a lie, you can't say whether this is correct or false. So I'll end up by showing this painting by Manju Nahata. The legend has it that Mahavir Swami, when he got enlightenment, he had a few dreams, and one of the dreams was this kind of a strange bird with the 7 colored feathers. And this is what Manju Nahata has painted. And this describes what 7 modes of existence are of anything is there. And such birds, of course, do not occur in nature, but this is how nature is. So in the end, I'll say, even if you do not agree with me in view of an ekantvad, you have to say, I'm right. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Narendraji. What we'll do is to not lose the chain of thought, probably have a couple of questions that are really nice questions that have come from the audience, and then we'll move to our panel discussion. The first one is for you, Shamniji. Please expand. This is from Ravi Sharma. Please expand on the consciousness in the non-living matter.
Okay. Okay, so as I have said that living beings, though according to Jainism, there is the non-living things or elements, they are devoid of consciousness. But if some common people understand earth, water, fire, air, and vegetables as non-living entities, then we would say that they are also having one sense, and that is touch. And they have at least minimum what we say degree of consciousness which is awakened in them also. And I have mentioned that not only this water, fire, air, etc., they also come under the gross living beings or rather, but there are certain living beings also in all the five forms, water, fire, and air, etc., which are spread throughout the universe. They are found in the form of microbes, or you can say virus or like that, in a very subtle form, which are invisible. They are also having the consciousness. And the smallest living being, which is known as Nigor, it has also consciousness. So commonly people think these things non-living, and if you are asking in the context of all these entities, then I would say that they have also consciousness and that they have the one sense, that is touch. Through touch, they know. And according to Jain scriptures, these one-sensed beings have minimum two knowledge. One is Mati Agyan and second is Shut Agyan. The one-sensed living beings have two knowledge. They are called Agyan. Agyan means a perverted knowledge because they are having deluding karma, which is called Mithyatva, and that's why their knowledge is recognized as Agyan in the sense perverted knowledge. But they have also minimum two knowledge. One is Matigyan and second is Shrutagyan, that is perceptual cognition and articulate cognition. And they can also read or understand the vibrations of the people who are coming to them, near to them.
Thank you. A second question and probably a last one for this session before we go to the panel discussion.
Okay.
For you, Bhandari ji. What's the relationship between mind and matter? Professor Bhandari?
Mind is made of matter. So I think mind is matter only. Relationship means it has a memory, and whatever we see from the senses goes to brain, and then it is stored in mind. So it is one of the channels of knowing and recalling. Now, above that is, of course, consciousness and several other things, and soul. So it is directed by soul through consciousness. I mean, mind is directed through consciousness by the soul. And so it is a bridge between outer and inner self.
Right. Thank you. Let's move on to the panel discussion and probably have a few more minutes for the conversation on the panel session. Our first talk is Professor Bennett Schwartz. He's professor of psychology at Florida International University. He has more than 90 professional publications, including books, journals, and articles. His primary research interest is metacognition. His views are that the tip of the tongue states are a window on the active consciousness, as well as a case study in metacognition. It is well known in the field of cognitive psychology. He's also conducted research on the human and non-human primate memory. Professor Schwartz is editor-in-chief of New Ideas in Psychology and associate editor of both Metacognition and Learning and Nectar Psychologica. He's a complete vegetarian, mostly a vegan. So can we play Professor Bennett's video?
Thank you. It's a very cool thing to be presenting at this conference. The topic of my talk today is metacognition in non-human primates. This is not an area I've directly done research in. I've done research in metacognition in humans and memory issues in primates, but I thought this topic would be relevant to some of the themes of this conference. So I'm going to be talking mostly about other people's research, but these are ideas that I have also contributed to. So in Jain philosophy, this is from the conference website, animals have souls, though human beings are the only beings who can attain liberation as they are uniquely capable of making ethical choices. In the work on comparative psychology over the years, has often been this sort of this, we've put ourselves off as this ideal, as something uniquely human, only to find out with research that elements of these uniquely human features are present in non-humans, such as language, metacognition, episodic memory, theory of mind, and indeed fairness has been shown in some species of monkeys. So it's often a matter of quantitative differences rather than a qualitative change between us and non-humans. And so the work on metacognition has mostly been directed at demonstrating that some species of monkeys can show the basic of metacognition. So what is metacognition? Metacognition is our knowledge of our own knowledge, our feelings about our own memory and cognition, our ability to control our own learning and comprehension, our experiences of our own cognition. As psychologists, we measure these things by getting people to give confidence in replies they just made or judgments as to whether they're likely to remember something in the future. With respect to experience, we can ask people about tip of the tongue states. That is, do you feel like you're about to recall something that you can't recall right now? And deja vu experiences, the experience of having, feeling like you've been somewhere before when you know you actually haven't. These are kinds of things that fall in the domain of human metacognition. With respect to non-human metacognition, we're mostly going to be talking about decisions to escape. If you know you don't know, you want to get out. So I'm going to be talking a lot about escaping, and then one of the experiments I'm talking about also deals with betting, where an animal has to bet on whether they're right or wrong. And if you're confident that you know it, you're going to bet more. We'll get to that in a moment. So in this work, the main question with regard to animal metacognition is, can we rule out alternate explanations? Can we rule out stimulus response, operant conditioning, classical conditioning, in lieu of an animal being aware of their own knowledge? So elsewhere, I've argued for a more monkey-centric approach to studying animal metacognition. And by that, I mean that we need to adapt these paradigms to be things that monkeys like this Madras langur will do in their natural environment rather than simply in the lab paradigms that we set up for them. But in the current talk, I'm mostly going to be talking about lab-based research. So for those of you who aren't familiar with what primate species are, primates are roughly divided into these categories. Prosimians are relatively small-brained animals, often nocturnal, often very cute, like the bush baby at the bottom here. In the top are you can't quite see them. Then there's a species of monkeys that have been separate from the main line of primate evolution for a long time. We call those New World monkeys, and include the capuchin, howlers, marmosets. Capuchins are often used as monkeys in movies. And then we have the Old World monkeys, macaques, langurs, vervets, baboons, and then much more closely related to human beings are the apes, which include chimpanzees, bonobos, which used to be called pygmy chimpanzees, and gorillas, orangutans, and the gibbons up there. Now, almost all of the work that has been done in metacognition has centered on only one species of macaque, and that is the rhesus macaques, which are found widely across Central Asia through northern India into China and also down into Southeast Asia. With essentially feral colonies in Florida and Puerto Rico as well. Now, rhesus macaques are easy to maintain in captivity, and they also are omnivores and opportunists. So they're good actually subjects for studies in cognition. They show self-recognition in the mirror. They show some evidence of theory of mind. And as we'll talk about, they also seem to have metacognition. So I'm going to talk about a now almost 20-year-old experiment by my colleague Rob Hampton, which was entitled Rhesus Monkeys Know When They Remember, Meta-Memory in Rhesus Monkeys. The participants were two male rhesus monkeys, adults, some experience in the lab. And here's the basic paradigm. They're presented with a stimuli like the chicken, and they know they have to remember that chicken. Then they're put into two conditions. In one condition, they simply move, they see this purple symbol for a little bit, and then they move on to the test phase. In the test phase, they have to pick on a touch screen the symbol that they just saw earlier, which in this case is the chicken again. If they get it right, they get a preferred food, which in this case is a peanut. If they don't get it right, they're out of luck, they get nothing. Now, in the choice condition, which allows them to show some metacognition, if they have a choice. If they choose what appears to be a Turkish flag, they opt out of the trial. When they opt out of the trial, they don't have to continue in the experiment. They get a moderately okay food, and they're good to go. If they choose the purple symbol, they then go and get the test phase. If they get the food right, if they get the stimulus right, they get the reward. If they don't get it right, they get a punishment, a mild timeout. So if you're confident that you know the answer, you're going to choose the purple symbol. If you have no idea what the stimulus was, you'll choose the Turkish flag, opt out, and you don't have to worry about it anymore. So on trials where you know, you should choose the purple flag. And that's exactly what you see in the two monkeys' behavior. They're much better at identifying the correct answer when they've chosen to identify it than in the control condition where they have to choose it. So this is some of the earliest evidence of metacognition in a non-human species, in my opinion, the first real evidence. The research on animal metacognition is this demonstration that animals can be accurate in their metacognition, but we know in human beings that metacognitive monitoring is often inaccurate. So in the next experiment I'm going to show you, the idea was to see if you could demonstrate that monkeys were making metacognitive choices, but those metacognitive choices were in fact incorrect. Again, we have two male rhesus monkeys, one named Ebbinghaus, the other named Lashley, named after famous psychologists. And here we have a very similar paradigm. You get the stimuli, in this case a spider, and then just following along in the lower condition, you make a judgment ahead of time whether you're going to be able to get the item correct or not. And this is the betting paradigm. You choose the high bet paradigm, you're risking a lot. You choose the low bet option, you're not risking a lot. So if you're confident you're going to remember the item, you're going to bet more. If you're not confident, you're going to bet less. And then you get the choice, and the monkey has to pick out the object that corresponds to what they saw earlier. So in this case, what the monkeys are asked to do in the prospective condition is judge ahead of time whether they're going to remember it. In the retrospective condition, they're asked to do it after the fact. Are you correct? And what they did is they varied the ease of seeing the stimuli, the spider. If it's more clear, human beings are going to mistake that for being more memorable. And that's exactly what the monkeys did, at least on the prospective memory task. So the monkeys, like human beings, are misled by the salience of a stimuli into thinking something is more memorable than it actually is. But this only worked when they were judging their memory rather than what they were going to do in the future. So again, we see this evidence of metacognition, and we also see a mechanism that's very similar to that of human beings. Skip that for now. So in general conclusions here, we can say that metacognition is not uniquely human. We share it with our fellow primates, at least apes. I didn't get to talk about those studies, and a few monkey species, almost exclusively done with the rhesus macaques, but there also have been studies with chimpanzees and capuchin monkeys and orangutans as well. It suggests that the mechanisms for higher consciousness are not uniquely human. It's something that we share with, at least with our primate relatives. And so our intuitions about mental awareness in animals, that animals are aware in much the same we are, is supported by this work. And there's me with the green monkey. And thank you for your attention. And thank you for allowing me to participate in this conference.
Thank you. Thanks, Professor Schwartz. What we'll do is we'll finish the 3 videos and then we'll have a panel conversation. Our next speaker is Professor Andrew Bridges. He holds the Bhagwan Shantinath Lectureship in Jain Studies at the Cal State University in Fullerton, where he teaches the course Nonviolence, Animal Rights, and the Diet and Jainism. And he helps organize the annual Peace and Religion Symposium. His current research interests include metaphysics, epistemology, utopian studies, and religion and technology. So Dr. Bridges, video, please.
Greetings. The title of this presentation is Hegel and Anekantavada in a Wired Brain. Introduction. 2 sets of existential concerns about the interaction of religion, science, and technology. As we consider how the fields of science, religion, and technology relate to each other, 2 relevant sets of existential concerns become evident. Both sets of existential concerns involve the imagined scope of technological achievement. The first set of existential concerns may be expressed in the following manner. Based on one's understanding of religion and science, one would not want to predict or anticipate a future state of being that is in fact not possible. Likewise, the competing existential concern is that one would not want to wrongly rule out a future way of being, which may in fact occur, but which seems impossible, given either our religious commitments or our scientific understanding of reality. Let us consider a practical example regarding this set of existential concerns before moving to an existential example. Where I teach, as with many places prior to the pandemic, parking availability on campus was problematic. We are currently considering building a new parking structure to remedy this problem. What if this problem, however, is no longer a problem in 5 years because of technological advancements in self-driving vehicles? We observe the set of practical concerns expressed in the following way. 1, we don't want to not build a parking lot in hopes that technology of self-driving vehicles will solve the problem and then not have the technology come to fruition. But 2, we also don't want to build a parking lot and then have it be rendered of little use in 10 years because of the technology of self-driving vehicles. Now, let's move away from the practical situation to a more existential situation. We will consider the possibility of a technology for overcoming the existential condition of death, a technology for making death obsolete. Let us suppose that in 50 years from now, Google's Calico company has a breakthrough in fighting aging, and this soon leads to immortality in this life. We now observe this set of concerns manifesting themselves in this existential future possibility. Should we seriously consider such a possibility for our future? On the one hand, we would not want to dismiss the technological possibility as being too far-fetched, and then not be able to existentially prepare for it if it occurred. On the other hand, we would not want to devote precious time and energy realistically concerning ourselves with the implications of an impossibility. This is the first set of existential concerns we should be aware of when considering how religion, science, and technology relate to each other. The second set of existential concerns involve how we parse what is to be understood in a literal as opposed to a metaphorical way with respect to the content of religion as our technology and scientific discovery advances. Suppose technology provides humanity with immortality. Let's suppose death is no longer a fact of life, merely an option. Will doctrines involving death and rebirth, such as reincarnation, samsara, and moksha, still be relevant to us in the way that they were when death was a certainty. In a literal sense, it may be argued that these concepts would not be relevant in the same way because we can remain immortal in our current life. In a metaphorical or psychological sense, however, one could argue that these religious ideas are still quite relevant to this new existential situation technology has made possible. One might suggest that being liberated from the cycle of life, death, and rebirth is now a metaphorical or psychological way of understanding the decision not to be immortal when one has the option to be, whereas another might argue that these concepts should be understood more literally and as a consequence are less relevant. These are two sets of existential concerns we are faced with when explaining how religion, science, and technology relate to each other. In a general sense, I want to suggest that Anekantavada can help us recognize our own particular perspectives with respect to these sets of existential concerns and can facilitate discussion about various perspectives for mutual enrichment. I want to further suggest that Anekantavada can be of particular relevance to the possible future technology often referred to as the wired brain. Regarding the two sets of existential concerns, I am open to the possibility that this technology will become reality and that Anekantavada will have metaphorical relevance for this new existential situation. The technology of the wired brain and Anekantavada. The myriad effects and manifestations involving futuristic technology pertaining to the wired brain are not fully clear, but the technology would allow a mind to neurally interface with technology, the internet, another mind, or multiple minds at once. Again, because the wired brain is a component of the technological singularity, the precise effects are somewhat incalculable. Murray Shanahan, in the 2015 work, The Technological Singularity, describes the event by explaining, quote, "A singularity in human history would occur if exponential technological progress brought about such dynamic change that human affairs as we understand them today came to an end," end quote. Shanahan emphasizes that, quote, "In recent years, the idea that human history is approaching a singularity, thanks to increasingly rapid technological advance, has moved from the realm of science fiction into the sphere of serious debate," end quote. One work that brings this idea into debate is Slavoj Žižek's 2020 work, Hegel and a Wired Brain. This work examines a component of the technological singularity, which is the wired brain. In particular, Žižek explores how Hegel might react to this new form of consciousness rendered by futuristic technology. While reading this work by Žižek, I had similar considerations concerning how futuristic technology would interact with the Jain concept of Anekantavada, and I want to share this idea for discussion. In the article Anekantavada and Dialogic Identity Construction, by Melanie Barbato, many interpretations of Anekantavada are discussed and analyzed, and I was encouraged that each conceptualization described might share relevance to this possible future situation. When Jains encountered philosophical views different from their own, the aim of Anekantavada appears at least twofold. One aspect, it appears, is having a genuine experience, apprehension, and understanding of a competing doctrine or philosophical idea. The second aspect involves describing the partial or inadequate truth of the competing doctrine while affirming the belief in the complete truth of the Jain doctrine. This openness to the ideas of others while at the same time holding an unwaning commitment to Jain doctrine has been described as flexible fundamentalism by Christopher Chappell. Moreover, Melanie Barbato suggests that this dual feature of Anekantavada, quote, allows Jainas to both engage with other views constructively and to maintain a coherent sense of self, end quote. I find these features would be of particular relevance to futuristic possibilities of the wired brain, in which two minds have immediate awareness of each other, or perhaps even share consciousness. After or perhaps during a neural interface, a procedure similar to Anekantavada might be extremely helpful for both minds to engage with each other as constructively as possible and for each mind to retain identity afterwards. If we consider for a moment Hegel's philosophy of religion in contrast to Antikantavada, when organizing competing views, perhaps the relevance of Antikantavada to the idea of the wired brain will become more salient. After reading Hegel's reflections and hierarchical organization of the idea of world religions, which culminates in his Christian philosophy, it is evident that Hegel lacked authentic experience, knowledge, and understanding of these religions' ideas from around the world. Unlike Hegel, Antikantavada is not a single individual, but part of a living tradition which aims to have authentic experience, knowledge, and understanding of other points of view, while still holding to the conviction of the truths of the Jain religion. If the future existential situation of the wired brain presents us with such a thorough understanding of otherness, such that our former notions are tantamount to Hegel's conceptualization of otherness, I find that the dual commitment expressed in Antikantavada would be quite relevant to this novel future existential situation. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I look forward to the discussion. Take care.
Thanks, Professor Bridges. Our final presenter is Dr. Wolfgang Baer, who holds a doctoral degree from the University of California, Berkeley. His PhD thesis included a physical analysis of his own role as a conscious observer while operating a spectroscopic experiments. His interest led to the analysis of the cognitive vision and consciousness. He's a regular contributor to the conferences dealing with the physics of and consciousness, including the science of non-duality, towards the science of consciousness, foundations of mind. He studies cognition systems, development, and macroscopic quantum effects with the aim of developing theories integrating subjective and objective experiences. A recent book, Conscious Action Theory, focuses on the physical, theoretical, and physical theories that encompass consciousness. Dr. Baer, video, please.
In this talk, we examine the material existence of our soul and the life it evolves. To do so, we will use CAT, the Conscious Action Theory formulation of physics. CAT differs from standard physics because it includes our subjective experience on an equal footing with the objective world. This allows us to present a first-person perspective of what conscious beings actually do to be conscious. Now, CAT replaces our concept of a single independent objective universe with a cosmology of interacting lifetimes. These lifetimes build a multiverse of integrated mind-body systems which will replace our current Big Bang singularity with a more useful beginning and provide us with a deeper understanding of what we actually are. What we are is the fundamental existence question. The CAT answer is we are a self-repeating event shown here as a light blue region of action happening around a circular band of time. This action interpretation of physics shows two observable phases. Along the vertical axis are the first person and third person perspectives. These are directly experienced by the event. The material causes of our direct experiences are laid out along the horizontal axis. These are Wittgenstein's use symbols expressing theoretical assumptions. Their meaning can never be seen directly. These four reality phases transform into each other as the flow of activity circulates around the cycle. Therefore, in CAT, we are cycles of actions, event, or lifetimes. Taken off the page, we have an isolated, self-contained measurement explanatory cycle of activity, executing a series of changes through mental and physical phases. This material event executes the existence functions of a soul. It happens in nothing. It exists endlessly within its own space and time. As it remains isolated, it can be described as a Newtonian deterministic universe. In this state, it cannot be seen by other souls who are executing their own lifetimes in some other nothing. The current science stuffs the mental aspect of our existence in the inside of material. It hides our mental activity behind a veil of quantum probabilities without any ontological reality. It elevates our ignorance to a fundamental principle of nature, and this is wrong. Cat explains what goes on behind the quantum veil as movements of mass and charge, which are controlled by gravitroelectric force fields. Cat reduces to standard physics when the mental aspect is eliminated and leaves us with an incomplete only world view. A more complete worldview treats us as a never-ending lifetime. But we are not alone. A worldview of a few isolated systems are shown on this slide. One of these self-contained universes is your soul, and one is mine. We can only know of each other through interactions, and though I may always think of myself as alive, I only know you are alive because your soul interacts with mine. Interacting souls are therefore the signature of life. To understand how life works in Cat, we draw three interacting souls along with their internal and external action conductor arcs. We use a white rather than a black nothing background for clarity here. These systems are labeled you, I, and the rest of our universe designated by a capital letter U. Each of these action structures include a mental first-person cross-section view connected to a physical third-person reality model view. The action flow between these views are outlined in red. Here we only present three main scientific choices in how to explain what we experience. Religious theories have their place in an action flow architecture, but expanding science is the focus of this talk. It is most important to understand that the action architecture is fundamental, while our physical and mental beliefs visualized in the cross-section are individually, culturally, or species determined. However, if the action architecture model is to make any sense at all, we need to update two fundamental beliefs of modern science. First, we must give up the assumption that we are living in a real independent world of objects. Instead, what we experience, what surrounds us in our everyday lives, are events physically happening inside our own bigger action selves. Second, we must identify our body as the absorbed material activity captured during an evolutionary growth process. These body peripherals surrounded by red replaces the Big Bang and the Darwin creation story. We now propose a subject-object processing flow sequence executing in a supervening coordination up and down the scale hierarchy of our material found in the brain, which reflects our development history. The growth of this process, along with the higher level material aggregations in which the algorithm executes, are here mapped into psychological states. Conscious everyday interactions with the external world are shown at the top. Hierarchical subconscious activity execute in the brain material captured along the revolution history are placed below. The braided interactions implement a segmented time cycle with sensory information flowing down to the soul and the soul's desires moving up from the bottom. Here, the material hierarchy of the brain is mapped into a size scale. The whole brain executes global functions of its everyday tasks at the top, while the supervening hierarchy below shows the organization of smaller and smaller material structures captured earlier along the evolutionary path. The quantum level is reached at the bottom. In CAT, we recognize the quantum domain is an approximation to the mental aspect of existence. Here, the first person soul executes at the bottom left inside the standard neurophysiological hardware, where it merges into the quantum domain. We now introduce the incoming physical signals and their projected mental causes in the time loop by which science has discovered the evolution of our universe. According to contemporary cosmology, 13.4 billion years ago, the material emerged from its radiation era. And that did so after all the elementary particles of matter populating the quantum domain were formed. Placing these three loops next to each other shows three closed time loops from the present now to the origin and back again. These three loops describe the same soul and body structure happening from different aspects of interest. Our soul occupies the lower activity happening at the origin, upon which the layers of our body are built. Psychologically, this happens deep in Bohm's implicate order happening below the quantum level. We now understand that the activity of the soul happens in quantum material, which was thought to have been created in the early stages of the Big Bang. We now realize that this is only the origin of objective science. In CAT, it is the mind-body interaction phase in the growing soul cycle of our own personal existence. I'll let you read the summary until my 11-minute video is up, and we can open this presentation to comments and questions.
Thank you. I'll give it a minute for everybody to read the summary. Fascinating thoughts, and it's been a few questions. The first one is, I believe, let me just pull it up for a minute. Is there an order in animals for metacognition? And that goes to Dr. Schwartz. Is there an order as to, is monkeys, cats, is there a hierarchy?
Yeah, there hasn't been too many studies looking at different species, but you can clearly see that the most advanced non-human metacognition is going to be found in our closer relatives like chimpanzees and monkeys. There is research that shows, I think someone mentioned the corvids earlier in the conference, birds like crows and ravens, who will also opt out of trials. So the thinking there is that in the corvid birds, these sort of aspects of higher cognition evolved independently of what they did in primates. But if you go to most of the New World monkeys, like the capuchin monkeys and squirrel monkeys, which have been tested, don't show any of these uncertainty phenomena at all. They just don't learn it. And if you look at other species, like species of rodents, mice and rats, they won't learn it either. So it seemingly is a property of higher brain organization, but aside from what we can infer from it developing independently in corvids and it's seemingly following phylogenetic rules within primates, it's hard to really make inferences about whether it's a property of primates in particular and these birds, or whether it's a property of higher abilities of brain function.
So Andrew, I was fascinated by the fact, our lifespan obviously has doubled over the last 150 years, at least 2 to 3 times, depending on what continent you live in. If immortality does happen, right? What does it do to the concept of moksha, nirvana, soul, consciousness, and our curiosity, general curiosities and guiding questions, thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'm quite fascinated by that too. I think that it might do 2 things. One is it will help us to evaluate these ideas on a psychological level, and it'll help us to sort of reflect on the purpose of life, if it can be expanded exponentially. I think it also might help us try to understand the interaction between religion and science, particularly if it seems like a lot of these questions are open to science, and I'm not sure to what extent if they're open to religion in the same way. And technology seems to cause us some existential reflection on that. So these concepts could be more psychological in nature, I think, possibly. I don't, but yeah, part of the singularity is it's almost unfathomable.
So you talked about the technology. We do have a lot of colleagues here from religious studies. So Chaitanya Pragyaji, you might have a thought on it. Is religion as open as science would be?
Yes. In the present scenario, people understand religion as just rituals, and that's why they are not very much interested to follow religion in that sense. But if we think that a religion means spirituality, because there are 3 components of all religions. One is ritual, other one is morality or ethical values, and the other one is last one is the spirituality, which is the core. So, and spirituality is a kind of science, or you can say super science. And if we want to understand our reality of inner self and also the outer realities as such, we have to develop our inner consciousness. And for that, we have to learn religions, spirituality in true sense, and also try to follow it. So that must be offered everywhere.
Not sure whether Muni Mahendra Kumarji is there.
Yeah, he might not be, because in India the time is late. Yeah.
But I would love to hear the thoughts of the panel that should immortality happen, right? That we can be now immortal. What does that do to our concept of moksha, the need to understand consciousness, all the driving questions of today? What does it do to those questions?
You are looking for mortality in the sense?
If
moksha,
you're immortal,
or yeah.
Right?
Yeah, immortality. You are looking for immortality in the sense of liberation, but we are immortal. Even if we are in wandering or under the cycle of birth and death, then also our existence is eternal.
Okay. I had a thank you so much, Niji. I'm so sorry, we're running very short on time. I wanted to just open it up to Professor Baer as well. I know that we heard his video. If he has any concluding comments, Professor Bridges, Professor Schwartz. Yeah, I would love to hear kind of your concluding thoughts on the panel. Professor Baer, please.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if I'm on here or not. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, and you're live, and you're looking great.
Okay, it doesn't look that way on my screen, but Yes, I'm simply saying that current science, which means quantum mechanics, it's great for what it's done so far, but it's not complete. And its main problem is that it does not include the observer. Therefore, observer effects, things that happen in possibly not in my brain, but in the bigger self that I am that generates what I see around me. In that bigger thing, the effects of that processing have not been properly included into science. And the first step that I recommend is that we get rid of the objective assumption that the world out there is a real, separate, and independent objective thing, and replace it with the fact that I am constantly, and so are you, constantly processing, and therefore the fundamental is the activity of processing. This is an event. An event exists in its own time, and it has continued existence. So the problem of do we exist and so on and so forth is actually reflected in science when we switch from an objective world to an event-oriented world. And that's the next step in science. When that takes place, there will be a bridge between almost all religious thinking and what we now know, or what we will know as science. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Professor Baer. That was wonderful. Professor Schwartz and Professor Bridges, any concluding thoughts?
I just like to, oh, go ahead. I was just going to say thank you for this very interesting conference, and thanks for those of you who stayed up really late. I've learned a lot.
Thank you. Thanks, Professor Schwartz. All right, Professor Bridges.
And likewise, thank you very much for inviting me here. And likewise, I've learned a lot, and I'm just attempting to sort of cohere all the knowledge into more. So thank you very much.
Okay, well, I'll open it up to the panel, to our panelists. Do you guys have any questions? I know Professor Deepak Jain is there. Are there any questions from anyone on the panel? And then we can also read the questions if we have time.
No, I just want to convey my sincere gratitude to all the speakers and the panel members. This was a very enlightening session. And I'm so happy that people are digging deep into research into this whole area of soul consciousness. And Samniji, with your effort, I think we would learn more as people start looking into it in a course. What impressed me most was there was this scholarly approach to looking into this whole, I would say, science, consciousness, soul, whatever words we use, but I think over time we will get a deeper and a better understanding, and the speakers were absolutely outstanding. So thank you. Great learning experience.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Very good,
Right.
very good, very good.
It needs a lot of time for going into deeper discussion, critical analysis, logical arguments, which have been given in the philosophical text. We start teaching one text on consciousness, it takes 1 year to complete.
So hopefully we can also continue the discussion. We'll try to create a listserv as well for our speakers. And then even in the future, thinking about kind of future projects and funding and sort of collaboration between scholars in here and in India. So I think that would be a great way to sort of continue the research and the work. So we are almost out of time. I just wanted to thank everyone for coming. It's been an honor and a pleasure, particularly Professor Bhansali for chairing the session. Yes. So this will be the last session of the day. So we're ending in about 2 minutes. Overall, I think the conference is going really well. I hope you guys are enjoying it. We're learning a lot. For the speakers, if you're interested in continuing the conversation, we're happy to do that. We'll also get your papers hopefully by the end of, we'll connect with you at the end of the conference and then sort of publish that as well. So we're looking forward to a nice conference publication, as well as sort of following up with amazing and very, very interesting questions that have come through the Q&A that unfortunately we haven't had much time to connect with. So we really appreciate everyone attending. We have 2 more days of the conference, again, starting at 7:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the United States, 5 p.m. In India for the next 2 days. And the next session that's going to be starting is going to be Karma Theory and Development of Consciousness, which will be starting tomorrow morning. So we have some great speakers that'll be joining us from around the world. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you for joining us. If we have made any mistakes, please, we apologize. We thank you for your kindness, your attention, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Jai Jinendra. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Iqbal.
Thanks a lot.
Jai
Yes.
Jinendra.
Yes.
बहुत अच्छा.
Extending to the end like an elbow, fingers getting stuck to the money, Velcro. Will I ever? Well known to OG like a pair of shell toes.